What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today we've got Kimberly Cook on the show. I first started seeing her kind of floating around in the Card Foundation Patreon Facebook page, and I noticed she's a Roman Reigns collector. You all know how I feel about player and super collecting. I was like, okay, especially somebody modern, she's got to get on the show. We talked about her background in the hobby, her style of collecting, but what kind of overshadows all of that is some of these really awesome stories behind the cards that she collects. This episode truly is for the die-hard collectors and just kind of reminds us why we do what we do. But before we get into today's conversation with Kimberly, just a few reminders of how you can help show your support for my content. It's easy, it's free, you're already here. Hit the subscribe button, give me a like, and spread the word about this channel. Trying to get to that 1,000 subs at the time of recording. Kind of a milestone I've set for myself to get to when I first started this channel. So if you could help spread the word, and hopefully we'll get there one of these days. Make sure to check out the Worlds Collide podcast. Myself and Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com each week getting together to talk about all things wrestling cards. It's available on all popular podcast platforms. Just search Worlds Collide Wrestling Card Podcast. You'll probably find it. And hey, if you do find it, give us a 5-star review and subscribe. If you would like to help show your support monetarily, check out Wrestling with Cards on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, that's right, only $1, you can help show your support by getting your name in the credits of some of the videos and in the show notes. There are also other tiers where you can get exclusive content and bonus access to other things down the road. You never know what's going to pop up as a bonus for members of the Patreon community for Wrestling with Cards. You can also check out my eBay store. I've got tons of inventory, very low priced, as little as $1.50 per card shipped. And there's also other discounts in there that you can get bulk deals and you can buy slabs. I've got all kinds of stuff in there. Always getting new inventory from collections I'm buying out and putting them up there. Links to all my social platforms in the show notes as well. Whatever you're on, chances are I'm probably on it. And you can give me a follow, interact with me on there. And of course, links below if you'd like to buy me a coffee. Gotta stay caffeinated to keep these videos going and keep these interviews pumping out. And speaking of that, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Here is Kimberly Cook. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. And we've got Kimberly on the show today. We've got a lot of awesome stuff to talk about. How's it going?
It's great. I'm having an awesome night. How about you?
Doing good. Always great to talk about cards. And I've got some feedback of people that want to dig deeper into collections. So we're going to get into that later on in the show. But of course, I've got to find out, how did you start getting into wrestling cards or wrestling to begin with? I always think it's an interesting transition to talk about to people how they got into wrestling cards, because there are people that I've had on as guests that have been collecting since the 80s, but then there are also people that just started last year. So where did you get started?
Big time about 2 years ago. I had joined the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast Facebook group shortly after both Brian Myers and Matt Cardona got Future Endeavored. Thought it was kind of something I needed to do just to help them along with keeping that going. It was something very, very fun. I really enjoyed it. So I wanted to be part of it. I wanted them to continue it, which they have and have been madly successful with. Right. Brian Myers in the group was doing something called Pack Wars, where you buy the pack, and if your pack wins with the lowest number hit, whatever, you win the whole kit and caboodle. I had played for a while. It was a cheap buy-in. I thought it was fun, something just to be involved with the group. And then I started winning 3 in a row. and like flabbergasted Brian, and that's actually how him and I kind of became good friends over it. But I blame him for the current collection. As for getting into wrestling, I've pretty much kind of always been a fan. As a kid, I remember watching like Saturday Night Main Event with my sisters, but I kind of got out of it like in the 90s. My sisters are both older than me, got married, had jobs, moved out. I'm the only one left at home. My parents didn't watch. So I kind of steered away from it for a while. But then I got a part-time job at Toys R Us in college and met the man that I eventually married, who was a big collector of Star Wars, comic book stuff.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I would think if you're working at Toys R Us, that's just like fuel on the fire of collecting right there.
100%. Yeah. 100%. And actually there's a small story that'll go with that too, with the collecting. That's actually how him and I fell in love, was over a 2-pack of wrestling figures. Wow. It was a Too Tough, Too Rough pack. I believe it was Jack Specific at the time.
Yep.
Of the New Age Outlaws. I knew that he was looking for this set, and I happened to be stocking the fig aisle when that box came in. I knew what he was looking for, cracked the case, pulled the figures out, bought them, took them to his house, had our first kiss that day, and we've been together ever since. So
You're telling these crazy stories, and we haven't even started talking about cards yet.
Fig fate. Yeah. So he was really the one who brought me back into it. Going to shows, watching the pay-per-views, not so much watching the weekly television until after we got married. But he was the one that really brought me back in. I did kind of steer away a little bit during like the mid 2000s. I kind of got annoyed with it, in all honesty. But another person who brought me back in probably full force is Natalya.
Interesting.
I really dug Total Divas, and reality TV is trash. But this it brought me back in. It shed that light on the women's division. It shed the light on the women's part of the WWE, which really hadn't been highlighted very much before. They tried to. I mean, the culture of wrestling has obviously changed over the years. But then putting that focus on the females, I think, kind of maybe opened up some doors for the female fans like myself.
Sure.
And I will definitely say that I'm guilty of jumping on that bandwagon. My husband's a huge Bret Hart fan, so when him talking about Natalya, seeing her on TV, digging the big hair streaks, he's like, "Hey, that's Bret's niece," and I'm like, "Oh, she's really cool." So I kind of latched onto her for a while. And like I said, and just kind of got back into it. That's when we started going to live shows again, him and I, and started watching a little, I would say religiously, but yeah, kind of religiously. And that's kind of what's led me to, just being a fan of pro wrestling now.
Wow. A couple things. I want to jump back. We actually had not talked about this at all, but so you're talking about figures, and obviously the Major Figure Pod group. What do you think? Do you still collect figures? Did you move out of them, like into cart? Like, what is the difference you're seeing between the two? Because like we see that's it's almost kind of like modern wrestling cards where you've got the modern versus vintage and stuff like that. I think there's a little bit of like the figure guys maybe don't understand cards, or card guys don't understand figures, and there's some that can balance both. So what's kind of some differences and similarities you've seen in both of those?
I think right now it's availability. The availability right now of finding cards in the wild, especially in my area. I'm just outside of Pittsburgh. I'm just east of Pittsburgh. Finding the cards in the wild is tough. Even the regular stuff, even before the move from Tops to Mini, it was very difficult to find things at a reasonable price. I wasn't finding a whole lot of blasters, on Walmart shelves and Target shelves. At local LCS here in town, I think they maybe carried a couple of blasters, but they jacked the price, 200%. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
There are some LCSs that I hit up closer to the city on a more regular basis nowadays that I've been able to work with. But figures are a little easier to find. But as for going, retro versus modern, right now we're both kind of focusing on the whole modern thing. He's doing more of the figures than I am. I've got my Roman PC. We'll talk more about that later. But now we're kind of going back and collecting a lot of the elites, focusing on the elites right now. A handful of basics, but we haven't gone back and done the retros, the Hasbros, the LGNs, the San Francisco Toymaker stuff. We haven't gone vintage.
It's very similar parallels to what we're hearing from people with trading cards too.
Yeah, and that's what my collection is too. My collection is from about 2019 forward.
Gotcha.
He did actually collect some cards back in his high school days. We actually just recently raided his parents' attic and found some boxes of old cards, mostly baseball and hockey, and I'm pointing because they're on a stack just in my eyesight. But he did have some wrestling cards, like the WCW was it 1991 set.
Yep.
I think maybe collected some of the wrestling cards back in his high school days. Like I said, about 1991 WCW. I think maybe a 1990 set from WWF. Just a handful of cards. And like I said, he's a bit of a completist, so that's kind of how things kind of exploded with me, where I got those packages from Brian with the Pack Wars, and we started organizing the cards, and it was fun to just, sit and look at the cards and, put them in the piles and get them in order or whatever. And he says, well, we need to complete these sets. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So then now that there's my key to start the engine and start buying into cards. So, actually there is a set that I got from Brian that I have not completed. It's the Money in the Bank from 2019. I'm still missing a handful of base, but yeah, that's just kind of how it exploded with me. And then, being a Roman Reigns fan, which I'm sure, we'll get into here in a little bit, but finding his things and the connections, the odd connections that I have with a couple of the cards, that's kind of how things have also exploded into him being part of my PC and me focusing on him as the main feature of my PC.
It's interesting that you guys wanted to start off finishing a set, because if you ask the common collector nowadays, they want stuff in slabs. There's not, from the most of the people I interact with, nobody's set collecting anymore, at least on that level. So so how did you kind of transition from just buying a bunch of cards into I guess, are you still doing that, or is almost a lot of the stuff funneled to Roman Reigns now?
It's still base. I still try to get at least a base set of everything that I've opened.
So base set collecting still is alive and well.
Yes, definitely. I do the shoebox size boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're just easier to sort, and easier to store on my end. And I probably have at now probably about 14 boxes full of cards, and a lot of them are the base set. And buying the blasters. I'm not a huge hobby fan, just because, again, they're tough to find in my local area unless I order them in from Steel City, which actually is not that far from me, about a 45-minute drive. But I've found some great things in blasters. Do I like the slabs? Sure. Do I own a couple? Sure. I've never personally said anything to PSA to be slabbed. I do have one in waiting with Paul Casal, who is part of the Card Foundation podcast, through Filth Bomb. I have a Roman Reigns rookie waiting to be sent.
Nice.
Once PSA loosens their reins a little bit.
Yeah.
I do have, no pun intended on that one. I do have multiple copies of his rookie that I do plan on getting slabbed at some point in time, just for the sheer. I don't want to say, I'm not really trying to make an investment out of it.
Right.
That's not what my collection's about. My collection is pure fun, and the thrill of the hunt. I definitely am at least a base collector. Try to get the subsets, depending on the card set itself. As hard as it's been, I'm dabbling into Prism, and that's difficult because the price is astronomical. I was able to pick up a handful of Roman cards for the PC that have come down in price a bit since the release, and they're not cards I refuse to spend a ton of money on a card.
Sure,
that's just me. I like I said, I'm not in this for the investment. I'm in this just for the fun of it. Picking up a base card for $5.
Right.
Things like that. I've been able to do to get most of the Prism set with Roman, but yeah, the set collecting has definitely taken up a lot of real estate.
Yeah,
on my shelving. So
there you go. You guys heard it first. Set collecting is not dead, despite what a lot of people like. And it's kind of surprising to me because I don't talk to that many people. That I talk to some people that want to collect, complete rainbows, or maybe do a set registry with PSA on a subset that maybe only has 20 cards. But as far as like collecting the whole base set, obviously you're a prime example. People are still out there doing it and chasing it down. And what is it for you personally? Like why the base sets? What like joy does it bring you as far as the collecting or going back and looking at it?
I think a lot of that has to do with my husband's style of collecting. he was always the type of guy who went to card shows and bought the complete sets in the long boxes.
Mm-hmm.
He actually ran into kind of a brick wall recently, and this is why he doesn't like the pack pulling like I do. He was doing I think it was the NHL 2020, 2021, the top sticker books.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through, and the boxes were probably about $50, but the set's probably like 800 cards, 800 stickers. He went through 5 boxes and still could not complete the set. And I think that was really heartbreaking for him, to the point where he kind of threw his hands in the air. He's like, oh, if I can't buy this set, I'm not buying it at all. So he's the type of guy who goes to Target and buys, the upper deck sets or the top sets or whatever for baseball or hockey, whatever, for the year. And he's content with that. Like, he's not a parallel guy. He could care less about the autograph. But he likes to have that whole set. Maybe it's an OCD thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's cool
maybe.
It's cool to hear that there's people out there that are not doing what the mainstream's doing. You know what I mean? Whether it's worth a lot of money or whether it's not, it doesn't matter. It's like the fact that you're doing what your guys are wanting to do, whether it's, it seems to be affordable, and it's like you guys are on a path, whether it's a PC or a set, you've got a goal to chase. So speaking of PC, we got to jump into Roman Reigns, and I'll just kind of turn it over to you and jump in when I want. So you're buying cards, putting sets together. You decide you want to start piecing Roman Reigns. What went into that decision, and then just go from there?
Well, first off, I could basically kind of go through my fandom with his. Obviously, fan of the Shield days. Enjoyed the faction. Thought it was kind of fun to have Ambrose jibber jabber and Seth Rollins come in, try to make some sense of it, and Roman just stands back with his arms crossed, whooping some ass.
Yeah.
So it worked. It worked. And the original form of the faction was only together for a little less than 2 years, but it really was impactful. The things that they were able to do, the impact that they made. And then in their singles runs, you don't see factions that break up where every man has had the level of success that those three have.
Right.
And even now, I mean, all three of them are at the top of their game. With Ambrose being in, Moxley in AEW, he's killing it.
Right.
And he's doing his indie scene, and he's like top notch. He's in great shape. Doing his thing. Cheers to him. Rollins has reinvented himself to the point where, he's one of the best heels in WWE right now. And then, words can't describe Roman sometimes with how his run is going right now. I mean, it's
unbelievable.
It's phenomenal. I was really, really worried when he paired with Paulie, but it has definitely paid off. Definitely something that needed to happen to his character. And if you've watched the Evil documentary that he was on, that's on Peacock right now, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Because I will say, my heart broke for that man after he beat Undertaker at WrestleMania, and he stood there at that Raw the day after for about 10-15 minutes listening to people boo the hell out of him.
Right.
And he took it.
Yeah.
He took it. He took every single word, and he just stood there and he took it. And God love him for doing it.
Yep.
He's essentially bottled that all up into what he is now. There are some things that were I really kind of really sunk my teeth into him and his character, and even to a point him as a person, right after the John Cena run back in 2017. It was a kind of a short feud, but I gained a lot of respect for both of those men during that time. Doing the promos, you could tell that John's pulling at Roman and saying, okay, these are the reins and I need to hand them to you, but you need to work with me to do this. And you could see that. And like I said, I gained a lot of respect for both men, during that run. And then I'll touch on it a little bit later with actually one of the card sets that I'm going to talk about. Pardon my dog. My heart also broke when he announced his leukemia diagnosis.
Yeah.
I too am quite active with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I lost a good friend to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma about 10 years ago. So I'm, very, active with the night walks, the fundraising, the advocates, and that hit home with me, maybe a little harder than most. And then, his triumphant return, and, he could have taken a lot more time off. but he didn't, and I think he did that more for the fans, for himself too. I mean,
Sure.
the guy's not stupid. But I really think he just enjoys being in front of the crowd and entertaining, and that's what he really wanted to do. I think he did an interview with Corey Graves where he said, if he could have continued to do his cancer treatments and wrestle at the same time, he would have, if it had not been physically impossible for him to do
Right.
so. So definitely a lot of respect for Roman Reigns, the character, Joe Anoa'i, the man. Just someone who has really hit home with me. And I'm not one of those bandwagon fans. I didn't talk on to him and say, okay, well, now he's the face of the company.
Yeah.
He's the greatest thing right now. Yeah. Join the club. I've been part of this club for years, almost 10 years now. So welcome aboard.
So that's the explanation of the fandom. So where did you? I love player collecting, super collecting, those sort of things. So you pick a talent, you're going to go for it. Where do you start? How's that going?
It started with an autograph. I was in a card break with Brian Myers and with Paul Casal, where it was one of those, you buy in, you pick your poison, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And lucky me, got pick number 2. And during the break, they had pulled 2 Roman Reigns autographs, one of which went to whoever was first. I don't remember who it was, but I think it was an autograph to 5. It was a red parallel on it. Ugh.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if that person still has the card. I don't know if they're even still part of the group anymore, but I'm jealous. But the card that he pulled, so I'll show this one off, is actually the one that kind of ties in with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society tie-in with me. And this is probably my favorite card out of my entire collection, is this one here from
Finest Returns.
Topps Finest, the Finest Returns, with the autograph. And it's the autograph set for the Finest Returns is a variant. So this was from when he relinquished the title. The partner to that, which I also have in a one touch, is the return itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely keep these ones together. I thought about actually framing them and putting them on the wall, but I keep them in a one touch, and I'm afraid to take them out. But
you could probably down the road. I've seen some framed at like specific frames with slabs or one touches in them where you could take them out, and you could do it.
Yeah, I'm sure I can find something along the lines. I'm in the process of redoing my home office at the moment, so maybe once I get some wall space, I'll look into maybe doing that. But these 2 are probably my favorite out of the entire set. But along with the Finest set, then I started getting lucky, and I ended up pulling this one.
Wow!
Out of a blaster. A blaster. Like, how do you get a Roman Reigns auto out of a blaster? I mean,
anything's possible, I guess.
And it was complete luck of the draw. And I thank Aaron Turner, who is part of the Major Pod group, and a good buddy of mine. Prior to even joining the Patreon group, he was one who actually sent me the blaster, and the blaster actually came from Orlando. So it wasn't even like a local blaster, but
right.
But yeah, I was floored when I pulled this. So yeah, then I got into another card break, and this was one of those ones where we were in a list, and Brian and Paul were doing it Royal Rumble style. So the first pick got the first hit pulled. Second pick got the second hit pulled. Well, the second hit pull was this.
That's one of the best ones yet.
So I get basically 3 Roman autographs within, I'm going to say a 6-week time span. So I'm like, okay, let's keep going. So yeah, I do have the base of the Finest. I have the green. Was able to nab the green and the orange. So I figured I tried to rainbow when I'm out as much as I could, but this is all the further I got with this one. But yeah, I kept going. So let's see what else. But yeah, I mean, as far as, Roman's obviously my top guy, and deciding to collect him was kind of a no-brainer. This was the drip that turned into the full-blown, faucet open up that the waters were flowing, and I just started picking things up.
Do you find it that when you start, this is kind of how I become, and other people I talk to that are player collectors or super collectors. It's like once you start going down that road, sometimes the collection itself, as far as like trying to track down other things or parallels or stuff, kind of almost becomes bigger than the whole reason you started in the first place.
Yes and no. I mean, I eBay hunt a lot. But right now, I was actually talking with Paul about this earlier today, that there are some rainbows that I'm trying to do. Obviously, I showed you some of the finest ones. I do have a couple more of the base set of the finest ones that are not autographed. A little more of a complete rainbow on that one. But there's a couple other ones that I've been trying to rainbow out too that make a lot of sense just for me. And I told you before about the husband with the figure fate.
Yes.
I got card fate with Roman Reigns too. Part of the base set from SmackDown 2019, the Roman Reigns card. I remember opening packs of them, and I didn't notice it at first, but I was opening packs of them, and I started looking at the card. I'm like, oh my God, I was there. This picture was taken. I was there that night. I'm like, okay. So I do have the base auto on this one. And if you notice, back in through here, there's an LED graphic around the arena. It's from Extreme Rules 2018.
You can kind of tell in between his arms where it has
that. Yeah. Which was in Pittsburgh. And I remember him wearing the red gear that night. I have in my pictures, and I'll have to send this to you, in my set of pictures from the view from my seat, I took a picture at this exact same time of him standing on that turnbuckle. And in my picture, you can see off to the side, to closer to the barricade, there's a still photographer who chances are is the one who shot that picture.
Oh my.
So it's like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
So, okay, I got to rainbow this one out too. So this one I'm still working on. I do have the base auto, and I have the orange auto. The base I'm still working on a little bit. I have the higher numbered cards. I'm still working on trying to find the lower ones, but then they start to get more less readily available and a lot more expensive. So that's something I'm still working on, but I'm not sure that's going to pan out real well. One of the other ones that I'm kind of rainbowing out too is, and I pulled this from a blaster too, is one of the moment cards from Flagship from this past year. And it's the one-of-one printing plate. This one is the magenta. I did find another one of the colors on eBay for about $250, and I passed. I can't find the listing anymore, so I'm not sure if the person sold it or if they gave up. So I figured, okay, well, I've got the one-on-one. I'm starting with the hardest ones to find.
Right.
Let's backtrack. So then I started rainbowing those out too.
It happens.
These have been a lot easier to find.
Right.
These have been a lot easier to find and a lot cheaper. Yeah, I don't think I paid more than $5 for any of these, because I think people kind of peed on Flagship this year. I don't think people really exactly cared for it. I'm not much for the moment cards, but when this fell on my lap, like I said, again, out of a blaster, I had to do something with it. It was like fate. So, and then the last one I'm rainbowing, and this is a sleeper card, and I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret, that these are going to be worth something someday. And you all are going to come back at me and say,
acknowledge me.
Acknowledge me. Acknowledge me, damn it. Payback. And this is from Flagship from this year as well, or from 2021 as well. It is the matte relic from Payback, and it is dated August 30th, 2020. This is day one of the impressive reign, the historic reign of the Universal Championship. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's a no-brainer to invest in this card.
Right.
So I have, again, I think it's one of those things with Roman where I bought cheap, and now I'm looking at these, and I'm seeing some of the parallels. I have a handful of I've got a bunch of these ones. Like anytime I saw them cheap, I was buying them. I've probably got 10 of them so far. Some of even the higher number ones, like the $2.99, they're going for like $40.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pay anywhere near that. So I mean, watching, and like I said before, I'm not really in it for the investment. I'm in it for the fun. I'm in it for the fact that it's Roman, and he's my guy. But I'm watching the things that I have paid this much for are getting this much money now, and it's crazy to think about. But his stock is just going to continue to rise, and I don't think there's any stopping that. Period. I don't care what kind of run he has on this championship. He's just going to continue to make money for that company, and the secondary market is it's booming with his stuff.
Yeah, it's finally nice. I've talked to a couple of people that said that wrestling cards are really the market's really going to shift when you start seeing a male kind of start getting some of the prices, because it was very heavily female driven as far as the card prices go. Alexa Bliss was always at the top, and now you're seeing the Roman stuff surpass her stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, the Bliss stuff. Bliss is actually one of the autographs that I don't have in my collection. I do have a smattering of autos. Actually, I just pulled an Ember Moon out of a blaster yesterday. I have a smattering of Talent's autographs from over the years. Hers is one I do not have. But looking on eBay, yeah, hers are tough to get. Hers are pricey. It's just not an investment I've thought about diving into. But yeah, like I said, Paul was joking with me earlier about how I bought. He's like, people need to listen to you. I'm like, the Queen knows what she's talking about. I mean, come on. I bought in cheap. I got in. I don't want to say ground floor with Roman, but I got in while people were still annoyed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just the stuff that I have is stuff that people. One of the other guys in the Card Foundation Patreon group, Stetson, a good buddy of mine, has been picking up some of the finest autographs as well. And I know, it's like I pulled some of these, the ones that he's spending $125 on, and I'm like, ooh, okay. So yeah. I mean, but that's the going price. That's right. What his autographs are sitting at right now. So
which is still really cheap. Like in the grand scheme of things.
In the grand scheme of things, watching some of the the finest Bloodline card, I would love to have my hands on it, but I cannot find one for less than $500, and I won't do it. I can't justify it. And like I said, I haven't paid a lot for any of my cards, and I refuse to do that. Like I said, I'm not in it for the investment. I'm in it for the fun of it. I'm in it because Roman's my PC. Roman's who I collect. I'm in it to complete the sets. I'm in it to have a little fun. I'm in it to rip some packs just for the excitement of it. But that's it. And like I said, I do have a couple of slabs. I have I think one of the few dimes I have is actually a Kurt Hawkins. The only slabs Roman I have, and I actually got it super, super cheap, which I did grab to show you. It's slabbed by a company called GMA Grading. I have never heard of them.
Yeah, they're one of those like super low tier ones, but
yeah, it is a dime, and it's from Heritage 2017.
I know that card.
But yeah, the person who sold it to me super, super cheap because there's a nick in the casing. So like I said, it is a dime. Am I gonna crack it? Maybe send it to PSA. Maybe down the road. I don't know. We'll see. But that's my only other.
Either way, it's an inexpensive thing in your PC.
Yeah, and it's protected too. I mean, anything with the slab obviously is going to have that seal of protection to it. There's nothing that's going to happen to that card unless I step on the slab or something, which I don't see happening. So to have it protected like that, I think is fine. I mean, like I said, maybe once PSA lightens up a little bit, maybe I'll send it off just to see if I can get another dime out of it.
So we've kind of talked about starting at the beginning, set collecting, deciding on Roman, starting to collect Roman. Where is your collection going to, like, what is your plan going forward? There's some people that, just want to collect everything. There are people out there that want to consolidate to get those big cards. And then there are people like me with my Carrion Cross, Killer Cross, whatever you want to call them, where I just want everything. Like, I want the super fractors, I want rainbows of everything. I want like as many base, like I just want to hoard everything from that. So there's so many different styles of collecting. What's your plan going forward as of the time of recording?
As of right now, I am trying to at least base out the Roman PC. I've been trying to go through checklists. Cardboard Connection is a great resource for checklists with them, and I've been able to track down some lists of some older sets because they only go back to, I think, like 2017. But I've been able to get some checklists from older stuff too. I kind of want to do at least the base set of everything Roman had in Topps.
That's a really interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, and like I said, and the base cards, usually base cards, they're $1.25 shipped.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not throwing a lot of money towards it. If I find that parallel or that autograph, great. If I don't, I'm okay with at least having the base set. At least I want to have one of everything. That's my ultimate goal. Moving forward with them switching to Panini, we're going to see how the market goes and what the prices do. I did not get a hobby box. Again, I couldn't justify it.
Myself and others were preaching, if you were a player collector, like forget open. I know a lot of people like to open boxes, but it did exactly what we said. All the base cards and all the lower tier parallels started going way down in price. So and I saw what happened with the AEW cards with Upper Deck. Everyone freaked out. They got these boxes, and they weren't guaranteed the hits. There were hits in the boxes, and we figured out how they were packaging them and things like that after watching a bunch of unboxings. I was disappointed in what they were pulling, and I thought, well, I'm glad I didn't get these hobby boxes, because I'm watching people pull the same value of stuff out of blasters. Sure.
For $20, as opposed to the $400 that they were charging for the hobbies. So again, I would have liked to have completed that set. I'm still working on some of the AEW stuff. And I could probably pick up a base set on eBay for maybe $40. I haven't looked. But I can't imagine it's going to be that expensive. And as for Prism, I didn't buy into the hobby boxes. I was able to find a couple of hanger packs on eBay for not much more than retail, which just pretty much covers shipping. So
correct, yeah.
If I'd got them from Target.com, I would have paid the same amount of price. I am kind of sitting on those right now, though. I'm kind of wondering about opening them. I kind of want to keep them sealed, but I am so itchy to open one.
Open one and keep one. There you go.
I have two. I have a third on the way, so we'll see. If I open them, I'll let you know.
Well, one positive thing, and I don't know if this is, I don't know what you think of the price, but I just saw earlier today there was a few complete base sets of Prism up for like $200 shipped, and I'm like that's still a little expensive, but considering that there's like 200 cards in the base set, that's like
and they're good quality cards. I'm not super familiar with Upper Deck and with Panini, just because I hadn't collected anything from their product before. My husband a little more with Upper Deck, but like you said, he's not into the parallels and stuff. He's a base set kind of guy. But when I got these Prism cards, I'm like, man, these are nice. Like there's texture to them, and the shine on them is great. And actually, one of these ones that I was able to pick up, where did it go? This just came in the mail. I'll pull it out of the
impromptu mail
bag.
Day.
Impromptu mail day, yeah. This one just came, and it is the Paul Heyman
such
blue
a good
variant.
card.
What a pretty card. I mean, that blue just makes that title belt pop. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a glare from my iPad.
Did you purposely go for that color match?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I've been telling people that there's so many hidden color matches in Prism that people aren't thinking about.
Well, I wanted to get the red Roman, but I keep getting outbid, and like I said, I'm not bidding a ton of money. I think I bid like $30 on one, and I happened to be driving and missed trying to, put any more.
That's some dedication.
But then I was like, okay, well, I'll go a little bit more. I was like, no. Thing sold for $100. I'm like, nope, tapping out. But I was able to get the red wave, not the red numbered. So at least I've got some sort of red with Roman.
Right.
Got that bloodline red going on. So I picked up those two along with a couple of the base, but that's pretty much all I've done with Prism.
So one thing I wanted to talk about is this. We've seen this resurgence, or not a resurgence, emergence, I should say, in these other aspects, women in the hobby. And I see you out there running circles around people in Card Foundation group, and I'm like, why are there not, like, when I stop and think, okay, maybe sports cards, I get it, but wrestling cards as wrestling itself, men, women, kids, like all three of them equally can have the same fandom, where maybe not so much in certain sports. Why do you think that we haven't seen more women and females and little kids coming into the hobby like yourself and being able to compete with literally everybody, if not having the best collections out there? Or are they out there and maybe the mainstream people or content creators like myself, maybe we're just not seeing them? Like, what's your stance on that?
If you're not seeing them, I'm not seeing them either. They don't call me the queen for nothing.
Okay, that answered that.
But I think as the landscape of pro wrestling has changed over the years, where the women, even just the women wrestlers, have gone from your mud wrestling bra and panties matches to legit athletes. I mean, we're talking people who are Olympic competitors, Olympic medalists, NCAA, standouts. These are women who are true athletes, and they make the wrestling fun. They're not scantily clad arm candy anymore. They throw down with the men just as well as everybody else can. I mean, look at somebody like Jordan.
Better.
If not better. I mean, look at somebody like Jordan Grace. I mean,
yeah.
Trust me, I would not screw with that girl. She could kick my ass. But on top of that too, these a handful of them are professionals. Dr. Britt Baker, she is a legit dentist in the state of Florida. If you look at the Bella twins, they have created several small businesses that are still wildly successful. And it kind of boggles my mind that there aren't more women that pay attention to things like that. With watching Total Divas, again, reality TV's trash.
Hey, and I meant to say earlier, you're not the only person I know that started like wrestling collecting a certain person based on that show.
Yeah, and I do have a bit of a natty collection, but it's nowhere near as extensive as the Roman collection. Watching these women be huge successes without having to have the men push them, and it boggles my mind that there aren't more women in the hobby. There are more women, wrestling fans. Yeah, I've attended a handful of live events since the lift of the COVID protocols. Was at Raw, the Go Home Raw right before WrestleMania. I was just at AEW last week. That I definitely saw a lot more families at WWE. The little girls with the Alexa Bliss gloves and the signs. I'm here to see Sasha Banks, that type of stuff. Not so much with AEW, but I think it's just maybe the product is a little more rough than WWE is. WWE's in that PG era where it's a lot more families. But the only women collectors that have stood out to me are literally the ones who are part of the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, that are part of the Card Foundation podcast. I really don't know. There's very few women in that Card Foundation podcast group. There's maybe about 200 of us total that I think are in that Patreon group. And I don't see more than maybe about 2 others who have, expressed an interest in the card collecting hobby, and definitely not to the extent that I am. And as for the figures too, I mean, my husband doesn't do any social media, so he kind of I would say lives vicariously through me through that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
he hates social media. He doesn't do it mainly because of his job, but that's a story for another time. But the women who are in that group, I mean, they're collectors. I mean, they've got better figure collections than that I could ever have, but none of them are really into the whole card thing. So, am I it? I really would like to think I'm not,
Right.
but in being part of some other Facebook groups too that are card based, I'm not seeing the females pop up. I'm not seeing female names come through my feed on these groups. So
I'm seeing them from.
then I'm it.
I'm seeing them from like my eBay sales. Like I sell a lot of low end singles, and I see the names that are coming across. But like, why is there not more of a collector presence? And kind of closing out the interview here, I had two questions that to kind of piggyback on this.
Sure.
How have you been treated and presented? Because I think that may be one aspect of why we're not seeing more girls collecting like in 8, 10, 12 years old, kind of like what I was doing when I was a kid, up to
Sure.
adults, is because I think that sometimes, if like I've heard stories from the Women in the Hobby podcast and kind of surrounding that movement where they go to shows and they're treated like they don't know what they're talking about, or hey, are you buying something for your husband? So, and in reality they might actually know more than the dealer. So have you ran into that? How have you been treated within the
within the major pod network crew of folks, between the figure pod and the card pod, very well respected, in all honesty, which I think is why I have such a presence within both groups, and the respect is mutual. I did have an instance, and it was one of the Roman finest autographs, with a seller within the major pod group who I found out had been scamming a couple other folks, right at the time that I purchased this card off of him, to the point where I panicked. We do a lot of PayPal friends and family within the people that we trust, and I thought, am I out this money? It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me mad. Only to literally have 2,000 brothers standing up behind me saying, we'll go after this guy if we need to for you. And I'm like,
nice.
Okay, that's fine. As for shows, I think sometimes, like, I don't think I've ever been screwed. I don't think I've ever been swindled, but I can sweet talk. So there are times when I can say, okay, I'll give you 40 for it. Okay. So I admit I use the eyelashes to my advantage sometimes to get what I want, and it has worked. I will admit it has worked. But I don't think I've ever been looked down upon by being a female collector. Like I said, within the communities we have, I've actually been pretty well respected. So
that's great to hear.
Come aboard, ladies. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
The water's fine.
Yeah, and like there's just like I still kind of think that wrestling has the most collectability of all age groups forever. Like whether you are a fan of the females or the fan of the males or a fan of Paul Heyman, whatever it is, from a 5-year-old kid to an elderly person, there's something there for everybody. And that leads me to my last question. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
There's such a variety, and nowadays it's even more. Where you've got the brutes, you've got the people, you've got the Hulk Hogan collectors, you've got the classic people. Like my parents have zero knowledge about pro wrestling. They know we go to shows and stuff like that, but my dad knows who Hulk Hogan is. My dad knows who The Rock is. My dad's watching Young Rock, and I said, "Oh, that's Roman Reigns. That's like a little young Roman Reigns in that one episode." And he's like, "Who?" I was like, "Who?" I was like, the long-haired Polynesian guy that I like. He's, oh, okay, that's fine. He like brushed it off. But like, he knows who Vince McMahon is. Side story to that, his mother used to live quite close to me and has an indoor tennis club that they built nearby. It's only about 20 minutes away, which I think is really fun. But God rest her soul, she actually just passed away recently. But there's so much variety in the wrestling genre. There's the pretty girls, there's the athletic girls, there's the pretty boys with, Roman looks like Jason Momoa. So you've got that little tie in there or whatever, he's The Rock's cousin. But then you've got, somebody like Ronda Rousey, who's got that MMA background, who's bringing in that, crew of people, and you can even piggyback Brock Lesnar off of that.
Sure.
Too. You've got football fans who may know who Baron Corbin is, and it's Brock too. So I think there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Else we're starting to see now, the amateur wrestling fans with Gable Steveson coming in. There's been a huge push for those guys.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they're going to do with him. With him having a Prism card already, without him ever stepping foot in a ring, I think was a little.
It's like Bowman push. It's like Bowman baseball, where you got the Jason Dominguez card, so he hasn't even hit the field, and people are paying six figures for the card.
People are going nuts for it. Is he going to do great things? I hope he does.
Yeah,
I really do. I wish nothing but success for him, but hopefully, if he falls on his face, then that card's gonna plummet. But
that's how it works.
Yeah, but I think the variety of talent, variety. And even the variety of companies right now too. I mean, it's not just the WWE anymore. If you like the hardcore stuff, go watch GCW. If you like something other than WWE, get tired of them, go watch Impact. Go watch AEW. Right. There's options for the entire genre, and I think that definitely makes a lot more. It definitely with the collectability of any of the merchandise.
That's another thing.
T-shirts, cards, figures, whatever.
It's another thing we didn't touch on is we talk about collectability and these age groups of collectors, but there are guys like Ricky Morton still out there wrestling. You could have been collecting his cards in the 80s when he was on the top of the world as a tag team wrestler. The guy's still going. Wrestling, the wrestlers can compete and be in the spotlight through their entire life, as opposed to sports where it's 4 or 5 year window. And if they're not Michael Jordan, then some people don't even deem them being collectible.
Right. And I think a lot of that goes along with just the conditioning, I think too, where, guys like him aren't wrestling maybe every single week, go out every now and then, and you're not killing your body, and that may have something to do with his longevity. And if that is, good for him, and, I love to see the older folks, how dare I say older folks, get in the ring. We were just at AEW last week, and the opening match was CM Punk versus Dustin Rhodes. A fantastic match. Absolutely fantastic match. Probably one of the best I've seen live. Mad respect for both of them, and mad respect for each other. They got up and shook hands and hugged, and I don't know how much of that hit air. But they threw down, but they hugged it out at the end. I love to see stuff like that. I think my husband refers to them as the old heads or the gray hairs. I'm not quite sure what he called them. He called them something. Just a conversation.
It's kind of inspiring though, because it just it kind of tells people, your age is just a number, and if you can just keep going with whatever you want to do. It's a great example for being.
Sure. Well, I watched Sting jump off a balcony.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Nuts.
To the point where I was so flabbergasted. I actually could not get my phone camera up fast enough in order to get the video. I was blown away by that. I mean, he's what, 63 years old?
Yeah.
Jumping off balconies at the peak. I mean, come on.
That's amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
So last question to kind of tie together what we were talking about is, what do you think that whether us as a hobby, the small niche that we are, or whether it's the companies, the promotion, what do you think it's going to take to get more people to get into wrestling cards? Because you've said it, the fans are there. They're buying the figures, they're buying the shirts, they're coming dressed as the characters, whatever it is, but maybe they're not getting into cards. What do you think is going to be I thought it was going to be Prism, and Prism has definitely brought more people. Well, AEW too, with the Upper Deck release, brought way more eyeballs into wrestling cards, and we are seeing more people collect. But what is it going to take to get cards to the mainstream, in your opinion?
It may be the availability of it. And like I said, I live in a town about 40 miles east of Pittsburgh, and we have a Walmart. We don't have a Target. We don't have, like I said, there's one LCS, and no offense to them, they're crap. So I think if you are able to get the product in more hands, that's definitely going to be a big boost. With AEW, with Upper Deck, with now, WWE being with Panini, there needs to be a cheaper product. And I'm not cheaping out. I don't spend a ton of money on these things because I don't see that. If you put something in people's hands, make it available. Make it make it affordable, make it available, and maybe it'll boom again. I don't know, is that too much about Upper Deck and Panini's products to know what their cheaper products are, but you just got to get the products in people's hands.
Do you think maybe if they would put them in the toy aisles where the wrestling figures are, that would even spark any interest from anyone? It's just an idea I just thought of.
It could, and I have seen toy hunt videos where I've seen them. Some stores put the cards there, but because there's such a high theft level, I guess you could say, I think most of the stores don't do that. Like at my local Walmart, I literally had to get somebody to go behind a register to get blasters.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I've got to get somebody to get that stuff for me. I'm not picking blasters off the shelf. There are some Walmarts that I do frequent between here and Pittsburgh that do. I can pick them off the shelf. My local one, nope.
Well, it's always good.
It's got to be visible.
Yeah, and we have seen commercials starting with AEW and WWE putting their Prism and Upper Deck cards on the TV.
Yeah,
so
I was very, very surprised to see that WWE had that Prism commercial. They need to do more of that. Impact does that quite often with the sets that they have, and they are doing their own stuff. And that's kudos to them for doing that and trying and banking on that piece of merchandise. Thank you to Brian and Matt for that idea. Because I know that they were very integral in them doing that. You've got to tell people that they're available. You've got to make it available. You got to tell people it's available. If you tell people it's available and it's not available and you're going to the stores, they're going to get frustrated. Make it available, make it known, put it on the social media. Social media is free, for God's sakes.
Right.
Put it on the social media. I mean, there was the Topps WWE Facebook page and I think an Instagram, maybe a Twitter, I'm not quite sure. I don't think they've done anything I don't think Panini's done anything with WWE being specific to their social feeds. I think they have a blanket, but I don't think there's anything specific to WWE.
Yeah, not that I've seen, just from the main account that they've tweeted a couple of things and that was it.
That was it. They've got to get the word out. There's got to be word out and it's got to be available.
All right. Well, great conversation today. Thank you for your time. Let everybody know where they can find you and anything you got going on that you want to plug.
As of right now, you can hit me up on Instagram and Twitter at KimmySue1024. You can probably hear my weekly purchases on the Major Wrestling Figure podcast and the Card Foundation podcast quite often.
That's where I hear them. Yeah, Card Foundation.
Yeah, that's where I stand out the most, I think. But yeah, those are my socials, and they're open. Hit them up.
Well, thanks for your time today. Thanks for sharing your stories, because I always talk to people, like, it's cool to have cards that are $1,000, $10,000 if you've got them. But sometimes that card that may be $1 or $20 or $50 or something like that, it's a story behind the card that can make it more valuable than anything. So thank you for sharing your stories today. Thank you for your time on the interview, and thank you guys for watching. We'll see you.
Thanks.
Thanks again to Kimberly for coming on the show, and wow, telling these stories about the cards that she collects and why she collects them. I hope that her stories today have really inspired some of you that are watching about, why do you collect? Why do you collect what you collect, or how you collect? What exactly is the reason that you do this, started doing it, or continue to do it? I think sometimes with the markets and rare talk and hobby headlines, sometimes some people can get kind of stuck or feel like they're in a collecting rut. And I think interviews like this today with Kimberly just kind of take you back and realize, this is why I started doing this in the first place. Maybe it's not about rarity or scarcity. Maybe it's not about the value of the cards. Maybe it's about a significant point in your life where this card or this moment or this picture or this item really made you feel something, and when you go back and start looking at that again, it reminds you of that, and it just takes you back to a great place in life. Make sure to give Kimberly a follow on Instagram. I've got the link below in the show notes. And once again, while you're down there, make sure to check out everything else I've got going on, and links to everything such as the Wrestling with Cards Patreon page, my eBay store, social links, and much more. And as you leave today, if you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, and until next time, click on the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content, and I'll see you there.